Okay, so friends,
Talk to me because I do have a suggestion.
we are going to finish. Hopefully, we'll finish the books of Samuel. As I said last week, these are kind of just things tacked on to the end of the book because David doesn't die until the beginning of the book of Kings, which maybe we can start today. We'll see. And so they tack on some things at the end of the book of Samuel. So let's see, we're at chapter 22. 2 Samuel 22. I'll get it up on the screen in a second.
695.
I was close.
I lost.
2 Samuel chapter 22. Okay. Someone might to read.
95. So David addressed the words of this song to the Lord. After the Lord had saved him from the hands of all enemies and from the hands of Saul, he cried, for he said, O Lord, my crag, my fastness, my deliverer. O God, the rock wherein I take shelter, my shield, my mighty champion, my fortress and refuge, my Savior, you who rescued me from violence. All praise I called on the Lord, and I was delivered from my enemies. For the breakers of death encompassed me, the torrents of Belial terrified me, the snares of Sheol encircled me, the coils of death engulfed me.
Okay, so stop. So what's happening? He's singing a song or he has a poem. We don't know the tune of it, of course, but you can see like the Psalms, there's parallelism. That's the poetic device. The main poetic device of ancient Israel was parallelism. So what does that mean? You say one thing and then you say it again in a different way, right? The breakers of death encompassed me. The torrents of Belial terrified me. Belial maybe some kind of demon of death or something like that, right? The ropes of Sheol is the underworld, encircled me. The snares of death engulfed me, right? Okay, you see how it works. Sometimes the parallelisms are a little more complicated. Sometimes there's 3 of them, but you know that's the main poetic device. So like later like Jewish and Christian commentary will say, well, why do they use this word and they use this word? Probably though in the Bible it's just use. It doesn't matter which way, they mean the same thing, right? Okay. Keep going. Verse 7.
In my anguish I called on the Lord, cried out to my God in his abode. He heard my voice, my cry entered his ears. Then the earth rocked and quaked, foundations of heaven shook, rocked by his indignation. Smoke went up from his nostrils, from his mouth came devouring fire. Live coals blazed forth from him. He bent the sky and came down. Thick cloud beneath his feet. He mounted a cherub and flew. He was seen on the wings of the wind. He made pavilions of darkness about him, dripping clouds, huge thunderheads, and the brilliance before him blazed fiery coals.
Okay, does God have a body?
No,
Does God have a body?
no.
Well, medieval Jewish philosophy would tell us that God has no body, but did our biblical ancestors believe that God has a body? It seemed that way. Now we could say, oh, it's poetic. Okay, what does it mean to be in the image of God? To be created in the image of God? Did our ancestors believe that we were like little gods? I don't know. There's a great work by a scholar at Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, named Benjamin Sommer, called "The Bodies of God." Right? He argues pretty convincingly. No, our ancestors believed that God was a thing, much bigger than us. Right? So I don't know.
There's we are created in God's image, or did we create God in our image?
Right.
So
Yeah, our ancestors wouldn't have said that. Right. That would, Freud would say something like that. I don't know, but like, yeah.
I thought Moses' song was that.
Right, so what did that mean? So, our commentators would say, oh, that means God's essence, that means God's attributes, that means God, right? No, did it mean it's back, God's back? Maybe. Maybe.
But if we're all created in the image of God, and all
Mhm.
humans, and we're all so different,
Yeah,
then,
so,
then what must God look like?
so one of my favorite rabbinic statements, which is part of the thing the person was called to say. Before they gave testimony in a death penalty case. It was about being created in the God, and none of us are better than the other, but then they say, when the Caesar makes coins, they all look the same, but when God makes coins, they all look different. Right? And so who's on Caesar's coin?
Caesar.
Caesar is, and Caesar was God, or a God, right? But when God makes coins, they all look different.
Robert, you mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned a few times that our ancestors really didn't have this notion of dualism so much. In fact, that our
Right.
bodies were.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that also implies that maybe God's inhabited. Separate.
Body, soul,
Right.
duality,
Yeah.
spiritual, physical,
Yeah,
right, yeah, perhaps, okay. So, but God has this creature called a kruv, or we say in English a cherub. Cherub didn't mean, a little baby with wings, like, was that, in Baroque painting, kruv was like, like a fiery mythical thing, like a griffin or something like that, right? A sphinx or a griffin or some kind of mythical creature, okay? So, but that flies around on one in this poem. Who wants to pick up verse 12?
He made
14.
pavilions
Oh,
of
we're on 14, sorry, you're right.
14. The Lord thundered forth from heaven, the Most High sent forth his voice. He let loose bolts and scattered them, lightning and then put them to rout. The bed of the sea was exposed. The foundations of the world were laid bare by the mighty roaring of the Lord. At the blast of the breath of his nostrils, he reached down from on high. He took me, drew me out of the mighty waters. He rescued me from my enemies so strong, from foes too mighty for me. They attacked me on my day of calamity, but the Lord was my stay.
Okay, so now though now we see maybe it is metaphor now, because it says God took David out of waters, but he's obviously saying it's not water, it's what? My enemies or trouble or something like that, right? Okay.
He brought me out to freedom. He rescued me because he was pleased with me. The Lord rewarded me according to my merit. He requited the cleanness of my hands. For I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not been guilty before my God. I am mindful of all his rules, and he has not departed from his laws. I have been blameless before him and have guarded myself against sinning. And the Lord has requited my merit according to my purity in his sight. With the loyal you deal loyally, with the blameless hero blamelessly. With the pure you act in purity, and with the perverse you are wily. To humble folk you give victory, and you look with scorn on the haughty. You, O Lord, are my lamp. The Lord lights up my darkness. With you I can rush a barrier. With my God I can scale a wall.
Okay, let's have that, right?
He needs a little humility here.
But
He needs a
it's
little
funny,
humility
though,
here.
he's saying God loves the humble, well, but it's God doing all of it, not me, but he's saying I am humble, right?
Well, he's saying, I'm blameless, I'm sinless.
Right. But, well, the evidence is that God is helping me, that's what he's kind of saying, right? But the David who wrote this song, we also know David later is not blameless, right? And he gets punished for it. Right, so when did David write the song? Well, it said maybe during the Saul period, it said at the beginning, right? So, okay. Now, here, so this is, you find, what,
So anyone who has any misfortune, it's their own doing.
perhaps, you might be saying that. You might be saying that.
You get sick, you deserve.
Well, it doesn't, not necessarily, but it could be sometimes, so it's when there's personal misfortune, does the Bible blame you, or when there's societal misfortune, does the Bible blame the society?
Mostly societal, right?
It's mostly societal misfortune, but sometimes it's personal misfortune.
Well, he's speaking personally.
He's speaking personally, yeah, yeah. So, sometimes and sometimes not, right?
But I mean, as we move forward,
Because of God, he's-
Good fortune is
he's
because of
saying
God
that's
too,
because
yeah,
of God.
yeah, right?
as we go through, we're gonna go to King's Nest
Yeah.
next, and when you go through that. This king was good,
Yeah.
this king was bad.
Yeah.
The good kings happened to be the ones successful at war, and
Yeah.
which came first?
Well, we'll see, yeah. Sometimes,
It makes me wonder whether David believes in a just world or whether things are going well for him, so he believes in it in the moment as
Right.
opposed to like.
so go back to the heading of the poem. This was when he was being saved from Saul and his enemies, right? This is not when he sinned with Bathsheba and, killed her husband, right?
So is it kind of like the oppressed tends to be innocent? Is it,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's a concept today?
Yeah.
Oppressed is somewhat innocent, the
Well,
powerful are not.
that's definitely a theme in the Bible, is that the oppressed, but not. But you have to say what oppression is. Oppression is the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, right? And God hears their cry, right? Yeah. So did the widow, the orphan, or the stranger do something wrong to be a widow, orphan, or stranger? No, the society did wrong to allow there to be widows, orphans, well, widows, you can't help them, orphans, people who are not protected, right? Okay. So it's not so simple, that's why this is not the best, but that's why it's tacked on at the end, maybe not the best of his songs, right? But we go now and we hear, you find these words, the words like this in other places in the Bible. Okay, so someone went to pick up at verse 31.
The way of God is perfect. The word of the Lord is pure. He is a shield to all who take refuge in him.
So what's God's way? What does that mean?
The law.
El Tamim Darko, yeah. The Torah, the way of living justly, right?
Yea, who is God except the Lord? Who is rock except God? The God, my mighty stronghold, who kept my path secure, who made my legs like a deer's, who set me firm on the heights, who trained my hands for battle, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have granted me the shield of your protection, and your providence has made me great. You have let me stride on freely, and my feet have not slipped. I pursued my enemies and wiped them out. I did not turn back till I destroyed them. I destroyed them, I struck them down, they rose no more. They lay at my feet. You have girt me with strength for battle, brought low my foes before me. Made my enemies turn tail before me, my foes, and I wiped them out. They looked, but there were none to deliver the Lord, but he answered them not. I pounded them like dust of the earth, stamped, crushed them like dirt of the streets. You have rescued me from the strife of peoples, kept me to be the ruler of nations. People I knew not must serve me. Aliens have cringed before me, paid me homage at the mere report of me. Aliens have lost courage and have come trembling out of their fastnesses.
Okay, so alien, I mean, that translation says foreigners, not non-Israelites, okay. All right, so pick up at the next section, 47.
The Lord lives. Blessed is my rock. Exalted be God, the rock who gives me victory. The God who has vindicated me and made people subject to me.
All right, I just have to point one thing out because I've been, I'm teaching this class next week on Zionism. I've been, reading a lot of Zionist stuff again, but the Israeli Declaration of Independence, which I spoke about a bit last night, does not mention God's name, but it does use this term, which has been used a couple times, sur. You see this in verse 47, sur, right? Which means what?
Rock.
A rock. It's one of the words for rock. So it says Sur Yisrael. So there's a prayer in the morning before the Amidah, Sur Yisrael, which is the rock of Israel, which is God in the prayer, and when we say sur here, it means God, it doesn't, but for the secularists, they said that's good enough, because sur Yisrael means the strength of the people Israel, right?
You know, it's sort of conference song, right?
But Ma'osur, yeah, Ma'osur is like a strong, a fortress, yeah, right, which you have this language all over here too. Exactly. Sorry,
You want me to continue?
yeah, keep going, which verse were you at?
49.
49,
Rescued me from my enemies, raise me clear of my foes, save me from the lawless men. For this I sing your praise among the nations, and hymn your name. Tower of victory to his king, who deals graciously with his anointed, with David and his offspring evermore.
okay, good, so the last verse here is actually, we say, like, we're gonna say Birkat Hamazon, but we do a abbreviated version in the full version of Birkat Hamazon. You say this verse, which has a parallel in another psalm, but one of them says Migdol and one of them says Magdil. It means kind of the same thing, so you say one during the weekdays and one during on Shabbat and holidays. But this tower of victory is like, you know, kind of like Ma'osur means kind of the same thing, right? Leonard Cohen has what my favorite song of his is, you know, Tower of Song. You know that song? Never mind. It's from, I think it's from the early 90s. But it's that, you know, plain unbiblical language like this too, right? Tower of Victory. Okay. We have another song, chapter 23. So let's pick up here.
These are the last words of David.
The last words, right? We don't have David's death in the book of Samuel. We'll get that at the beginning of the book of Kings, but they're throwing in, these were his last words.
The utterance of David, son of Jesse, the utterance of a man set on high, the anointed of God of Jacob, the favorite songs of Israel. The Spirit of God has spoken through me. God's message is on my tongue. The God of Israel has spoken, and the rock of Israel is concerning me. He who rules over people justly, he who rules in awe of God, is like the light of the morning at sunrise, a morning without clouds, through sunshine and rain, bringing vegetation out of the earth.
You get the image, right? Beautiful landscape, sunny day. Okay.
It is not my house established before God, for I have granted an eternal path, drawn up in full and secure. Will God not cause all my success and my every desire to blossom?
So what's the success? What's David's success?
Well,
Right,
his house.
His house. What does his house mean?
His name was.
That's just his name.
His name, but it's descendants.
Descendants, right?
His descendants, the dynasty,
Nice.
right? That right, I have this eternal covenant with God that the dynasty will last. That's the success here.
Right. Exactly. But the wicked shall all be raked aside like thorns, for no one will take them in his hand. Whoever touches them must arm myself with iron and shaft of a spear, and they must be burned up on the spot.
Okay. So this map will make more sense when we get to the beginning of Kings. Okay. All right. So now we have some, not narrative, but some list of more soldiers, bureaucrats, things like that. Someone want to pick up verse 8.
Well, I can only do it wrong.
Okay, he wants to read all the fun.
This is a hard.
Right, so learn Hebrew and it's easier to read
Yeah,
that.
I'm reading
Yeah,
Hebrew.
I
I
know.
can't go back and forth.
So
I
these
was
are
trying to go
names
back.
of David's warriors, and I apologize that.
Do you want me to read? I'll read.
I would like you to read.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
Yoshev Bashevet. He is from this clan called the Tachmoni, the chief officer. He is Adino Ha'ezni, He wielded a spear against 800 and slew them on one occasion. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodo, son of Ahochi. He was one of three warriors with David. When they defied the Philistines gathered there for battle, Israel's force retreated, but he held his ground. He struck down Philistines until his arm grew tired and his hand stuck to his sword. God wrought a great victory that day. Then the troops came back to him, but only to strip the slain. Next to him was Shammah, son of Ageh Haravi. The Philistines had gathered in force where there was a plot of ground full of lentils, and the troops fled from the Philistines. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the plot and defended it, and he routed the Philistines, thus God wrought a great victory. Once, during the harvest, 3 of the 30 chiefs went down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a force of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. We read the story about, remember the valley of Rephaim, south of Jerusalem. David was then in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was then at Bethlehem. David felt the craving and said, if only I could get a drink of water from the cistern that is by the gate of Bethlehem. So we're done with all the names. So
So the 3 warriors got through the Philistine camp and drew water from the cistern, which was by the gate of Bethlehem or Bethlehem.
Bethlehem.
Okay, and they carried it back, but when they brought it to David, he would not drink it, and he poured it out as a libation to the Lord.
That means like a sacrifice of liquid. Right? As a libation.
For he said, the Lord forbid that I should do this. Can I drink the blood of the men who went at the risk of their lives? So he would not drink it. Such were the exploits of the 3 warriors. Okay.
Avishai.
Abishai, the brother of Joab, son of Zeruiah, head of another 3. He once wielded his sword against 300 and slew them. He won a name among the 3 since he was the one most highly regarded among the 3. He became their leader. However, he did not attain to the 3. Okay.
You want me to do? Okay, so Ben Yahu, or in English Ben and Naya, right? Ben Yahu, Ben Yehoyada, from Chayil, or from it says, I don't know why it's Kabzeel, and here from Kabseel, was a brave soldier who performed great deeds. He killed the 2 sons of Ariel of Moab. Once on a snowy day, he went down into a pit and killed a lion. Yeah, he also killed that.
He also killed an Egyptian, a huge man. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, yet Beniyahu went down against him with a club, wrenched the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Beniyahu, son of
Yehoyada.
Jehoiada, and he won a name among the 3 warriors. He was highly regarded among the 30, but he did not attain to 3. David put him in charge of his bodyguard. Keep going?
Yeah, you can do these names. You want me? I'll do all the names. I'll do it. But where Asahel, among the 30, so we're just talking about David's top warriors. Among the 30 were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, son of Dodo from Bethlehem, Shammah, the Harodi, Elikah, the Harodi, Peletz, the Hapalti, Ira, Ben Ikesh, Hatikoi from Tekoa, Aviezer, Anatoti from Anatot, which is where Jeremiah, the prophet, later comes from. Mivunai, the Hushati, Salmon, the Achoti, Marai, the Netofati, Caleb ben Ba'ana, the Hantofati, Itai ben Rivai, from Gibeat b'nei Binyamin, Ben Yahu, Piratoni, Hidai Minachale Gaash. Avi Alvon, from he's the Arbati. Asmavet, right, which means kind of has to do with death, from Abahumi. Eliachba, or Eliachba, Hasha'albauni, B'nai Yeshen, the sons of Yeshen, Yonatan, Shama Ha'arari, Shama the Ararite, right? Achiam, the son of Sharar, Arari. Eliphelet, son of Achasbai, son of Ma'achati. Eliam, the son of Achitophel Hagiloni. Chetzrai, Karmali. Pa'arai, Arbi. Yigal, some of these names you hear in Hebrew say Yigal, Ben Natan, Mi Sova, from Sova, Mi Hagadi, the son of Gadi, Selek Ha'amoni, so like the Ammonite, Nachrai, Hab-Eroti, then Nosei Kile Yoav, the arm bearer of Yoav, then Tsuruya. Ira, Itri, Ira, the maybe that's where the English name Ira comes from. Yeah, is that right here? Yes. No, right here. And Gareb Hayiti. Then Uriah, who was Uriah?
One of the
Bathsheba's husband.
Uriah, that Uriah, right? Uriah is who David killed, right? It was Bathsheba's husband. Achiti, these are the 37 people that guarded David. That were David's top people.
So do you think they listed them to give it like a geographic range, should I tell them the United
Yeah.
Nation?
Yeah, give them their due at the end of the book, too. Yeah,
To give them their due, but also that
to show that they're from all around, yeah.
from all around.
They're not just Judahites, yeah, I think so, yeah.
It's interesting that there's like three designations, either they're son of somebody, which to me means the fathers were of some import,
Yeah.
or they're from an area,
Or
which one,
from
or a tribe. It seems like different.
some of them may not have been Israelites.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of like Uriah probably might not have been an Israelite, yeah, exactly. So it was to give them a lasting name in the book, right? To show that they're from different places, yeah, probably. Okay, so now we have
a
a,
celebration of violence we don't normally see.
do we not, we have walls of soldiers and memorials
No,
of
but I'm
soldiers
saying
and.
it's kind of class, like you see in the Iliad and.
Oh, right, but it doesn't talk about their deaths, it doesn't talk about
Exploits.
their exploits, a bit,
A
but not-
bit, but not over.
right, yeah, like as we've said since the beginning of we started reading Joshua. Violence is part of these stories, but it doesn't dwell on the violence. It tells us the violence, but it doesn't dwell on it. It doesn't give it long paragraphs about the violence. It doesn't give glorious stories of death like the Odyssey and the Iliad. You know, sort of that, right? There's no farewell speeches before they die. And David gives a farewell speech, but he dies of old age, right? That's dying of old age is the ideal in Israelite cult in the Bible, not dying in battle, right? While in a lot of the Greek stories, dying in battle is the ideal.
How old was David when he?
We'll see.
Okay, all right. Just curious.
But I think he was 7. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
I think it's interesting, some of the verses, a little bit further back on page 697, I apologize. It says, I pursued my enemies and wiped them out. I did not turn back till I destroyed them. I destroyed them and struck them down. They rose no more and lay at my feet. Sounds like Netanyahu.
Okay, well, so here's the question. This book has been meditations through stories, but meditations on politics and governance, right? Is violence or the threat of violence, is that inherent to sovereignty? Is violence or?
Authority seems to be a tool.
It's a tool, right? I mean, it's a tool even here in Morristown. Our cops carry guns and sticks, right? And they will hit you or shoot you if they have to, right? The threat of the state is part of politics, right?
Inherent to being human.
Inherent to being human. So governance, does sovereignty keep individuals from doing it to each other? Is that the part of the point of a sovereign state?
Monopolization of violence. A
Yeah.
strong state has that
Yeah.
and weaker states don't.
Maybe an attempt to keep it from getting out of control. I don't know that they can prevent it.
Well, right, right, but so, like the 17th century Hobbes, is it Hobbes? Yeah, Hobbes. Who said, people agree to give up their individual rights to the sovereign so that they can be protected, right? Isn't that what the Israelites did in the beginning of the book of Samuel? Give us a king. Why do they need a king? Or why do they want a king?
But that's sort of the basic concept of the social contract.
Yeah.
anyway.
That's what he read the book. He read the beginning of the book of Samuel. That was the people entering into a social contract for a king because why did they want a king? Remember?
To protect them.
Protect them. What can the king do? The king can levy taxes to raise an army.
But the difference between Hobbes and Locke
Yeah.
was that Hobbes believed once you entered in a contract, you could never change it.
Right.
Whereas Locke believed
Wow.
that
What-
if the powers that be
Yeah.
abuse their power.
You
then
can
the
overthrow
people
them.
Have the right to
So
change
overthrow
the
them.
government.
Well, so we'll get into that in the book of Kings, but in the book of Samuel with David, it's an everlasting covenant that David's family gets to rule, right? So,
But if you have the Lockean view,
Yeah.
that degrades the safety and power. To me, there's a direct relation to that. If you could overthrow, then there's gonna be people who disagree,
Yeah.
and that's gonna degrade that.
right, so the book of
That's
Samuel,
what our government is based on. is the
Right.
Lockean-
And when people-
except that when some of the people, 150 something years ago wanted to overthrow, then they said, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. So,
January 6th.
yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's it. And
So in a democratic system, you overthrow the authorities through
Through
peaceful
elections.
elections.
Yeah.
Right, and because you can only rule for a set amount of time, if you're the president at least, you can only rule for a set amount of time, the theory is that it causes peaceful transfers of power. What is Samuel, the last chapters of Samuel, when we have David's son, and we'll see this with other sons in the beginning of Kings, what does monarchy cause a peaceful transfer of power? No. No, because it causes, it's the mixture, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, the mixture of being a real person with a family and being the king, right? Families, you have love and loyalty to your family, and yet it's also politics. The people in the family want to be in charge, right? And so that causes problems too. I mean, just watch, that happened, like, watch Succession or whatever, on HBO. Right, and so the sovereignty, transfer of power, violence, these are all things that are meditated on in this book. Is it a perfect system? What's the Bible saying? There is no perfect system except the sovereignty of God, but we can't live up to that, right? That's what I think they're trying to say. But it's ambiguous because there's trade-offs. What is the sovereign state bring to the Israelites?
No,
More stability, protection from surrounding people, right? Yeah,
king that takes whatever he wants.
well, it doesn't say David does that, but
But-
Solomon will.
But David did, there's examples of him doing it.
Right, takes what he wants, but it doesn't oppress the people.
He doesn't oppress the people, but, yeah.
But we'll see what Solomon does.
But it
Sorry.
centralizes the government.
Yeah, centralizes the government, gives jobs,
It gives
builds infrastructure, right? We saw all of that. We see list of the people who worked in the palace, job programs. But we also saw the infrastructure and Solomon's huge in infrastructure, we'll see that, gives job, well,
Well,
that
you
was,
have a
it was,
military
it was not,
class.
it wasn't really giving jobs, it was forced labor, but that's a different story, but,
You get to your level of living from a subsistence
yeah, you might.
to a
You build
stratified
kind, you might build
society.
kind of a welfare state a bit, yeah,
Well, not just that, but you have different classes
Yeah,
of people. You
yeah.
have the military, you
you
have
have the scribes, you
you
have the,
scribes, you
yeah.
have the government workers, you
Mhm.
have the farmers.
Yep.
So instead of just an egalitarian society, you now have rank
yeah,
and you know, structure, and wherever you have a structure, you can have class.
Yeah, but even before the king, it wasn't necessarily egalitarian.
well, the ideal was that every family had their plot of land, and there was no, there was no one leader, each tribe had their elders, but yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and when Jefferson wrote about a farming community, a
Right.
farming nation,
The
it
yeoman
wasn't
farmers.
really that either.
Right, right,
Right.
they had slaves, yeah.
Yeah.
They had slaves in Jefferson, the people in Virginia who, you know, own these huge plantations, it was because like. They're, you know, a couple generations before them, they were like the third son of some lord in England, who, you know, the first son. Inherited the property, the second son went in the priesthood or the military or whatever, so the third son went to America to set up an aristocracy in America. Right, that's where Jefferson came from, even though we talked about this egalitarianism, right?
Not sure there's ever a case of true egalitarianism.
No, but even with the more quote egalitarian society, it brought problems. It brought disunity between tribes. And no security with the people, you know, with the and borders, things like that, right? So. Okay,
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I'm thinking this through as I'm saying it, you were saying before that the best way would be without a king and with God, but we don't live up to
I
it.
mean, that's what the beginning of the book of Judges seems to say,
But
right?
it seems like that's a big circle because God made us the way we are, so
Yeah.
we never could do
That-
that. And
that's-
if we were living up to it, then we wouldn't be the humans that God made us. and-
That's
but,
the eternal question, right from the third chapter of Genesis, why did Adam and Eve sin? If God created them to make bad choices, right, why, yeah, and God, at the end of the story of Noah. God wanted to start over, but then God realized, oh, I can't do this, I just gotta let humans be humans, right? We're under some guidelines, yeah.
So then the best way isn't just without a king or without some human structure and
Yeah.
under God. but-
The best way is dark, yeah, as David said in the last song, the ways of God. Following God's law, right? If we all do that, even though we need authority and we need structure and stuff like that, following God's law is what brings stability. I mean, that's an idea in the Bible. Yeah. Okay,
Rabbi, I'm
Yeah.
very disturbed by setting up this quest for peace and harmony.
Yeah.
And yet all of this warring stuff and
Right,
all of
okay.
this writing about
yeah,
how
so,
great a warrior and how wonderful my
okay,
people who protected me. It's establishing the system that we still suffer from today, where somebody's got to overtake somebody else and.
so I'm not trying to give my views. Is that just part of the human
Yeah.
condition?
Well, it's part of the animal condition.
Are we animals?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Right.
animals live peacefully together.
I
Well,
guess-
Except when they eat each other.
My dogs fight all the time.
I don't know, I mean, yeah, I don't.
There's a harmony in the natural world because we see that as natural. That the tigers eat the monkeys or what, you know, whatever. Tigers eat, yeah.
I think, Lori, the question is it the least bad
Is
solution?
it the least bad
I
solution?
can't imagine.
So,
There's gotta be better.
so I'll say this, I think being a pacifist can be immoral. And yet at the same time, I don't want there to be war, right? Yeah, and I say, I think, because I think self-defense is a moral act. You know, being a pacifist is allowing people to die, because, now, if everybody, all, 7 billion people in the world, or however many they are, decide to be a pacifist, that would be great. Yeah. And so, yeah. And so, I would say. we privileged Americans think that there aren't people fighting, that there aren't people protecting us and that we're just living people, right?
I mean, it gets back to the whole point about.
Now, that's not we could argue that the American military machine fights stupid wars that we don't need, yes, but. I mean, Henry Kissinger just died. We can have a whole 2-hour discussion on that when it comes to the book of Samuel too, right? Yeah.
But it's just interesting, I discussed last time, really, from the time this was written to today.
Yeah.
There's been a lot less violence.
Yes,
A lot less, and even with everything that's happening, oh, yeah.
and there's a lot,
A
right,
lot less violence now than there was, in medieval times.
80 years ago in World War II.
Yeah, or 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
When this was 2,000, when this was 3,000.
3,000 years ago,
When this was written.
Yeah.
You know,
We're bombing,
But
we're bombing Gaza.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Oh.
12,000 people,
It's-
horrible that is.
It's relative.
It's-
Yeah, that's the thing. As the weapons get bigger and stronger and more effective.
And you could,
Right.
you could see this now.
there are fewer wars going on in the world than there were generations past.
Absolutely.
Now, but those wars happen, but that's no answer for those people who are suffering in that
I'm
war.
just saying, so it has to do with what Rabbi was saying, which is kind of
But
stronger, I'm sorry.
sorry, no, but here's an American question. Why are there fewer wars?
Pax Americana,
Because they're scared of American might,
Pax Americana.
partly, right? That's like the Roman Empire, you know, under Augustus, right? What was it called? Pax Romana,
Yeah.
because they suppressed everybody,
Pax Americana,
right?
Pax Napoleon.
Right, and so,
Well, I would think the atomic bomb also helped.
yeah,
It's-
yeah, yeah, exactly. The threat of annihilation keeps, I mean, that's Kissinger right there.
Yeah, they're using, swords, it's violent, but one-on-one.
Yeah,
It's not
so-
the same.
So I think I might have mentioned this over the years. I had a friend from college who after college went to work on Capitol Hill, and he was a staffer for the Defense Committee of the Senate, I think in the Senate, it's called the Defense Committee, something like that. Some committee that has oversight of the military. And I ran into him after college, and so this was probably 2004, 2005, something like that. And I was asking him about drone warfare, right? And he was saying this was a really right-wing guy I knew in college, right? He's like, no, drone warfare is bad because it takes away the personality, the person to person of war, and the people shooting the drones are just playing video games, or like playing video games, right? And so
when the drone itself makes
this was before that, yeah, right. So the drone itself in a few years is gonna start making the decision, yeah.
not a few years.
Yeah.
Right now.
But
Yeah.
aerial warfare in World War II was a step in that direction.
Yes,
Because it was totally impersonal.
Yep.
It was these, we glorify these people who are
we
flying over.
we
dropping
destroyed
bombs.
the American, not the atomic bomb, but in Germany, we destroyed cities, destroyed civilians. Yeah, yeah. Was that better than letting the Nazis win? Yeah.
I was thinking
Yes.
more in terms of just
Yeah.
the actual, the technology being a step towards drone warfare.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, right, so a fighter jet was a step towards drone warfare. Yeah.
So isn't it safe to say that the choice to be either pacifist or militant, partly interpretation and partly motivation?
Motivation, yeah.
And
But-
interpretation, like
Yeah.
I interpret that you're
Yeah.
threatening me,
You're
so I
threatening.
choose.
I think Rabbi's point is right, if you're a pacifist, you're accepting the status quo.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's great to be a pacifist when you're in the society that has everything and whatever else, and because, hey, I don't want to tip the boat here. If you're
Denial.
right, so it's a big difference between, Rabbi made the point, he said, is military the way to get what you want?
Sure.
Well, yes, and so if you're a pacifist, you're saying it's okay the way it is.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you go to jail,
Yeah,
you're not just saying the status quo is fine. You're
right. But by being, so the pacifist, there's an active pacifist, and then there's a pacifist who's like, just covering their eyes to everything, right?
Apatheticist,
What's that?
an apatheticist.
Yes, yeah,
Just
being
made up that
right,
word.
yeah, or ambivalent or whatever, right, yeah. And so. The book of Samuel is struggling with these things. I don't think it's glorifying the violence as much as it could. And yet it's not shying away from how violent sovereignty is, right? When you have a state, there is violence. It's also saying when you don't have a structured state, there's violence against you, right?
I think one of the problems I have with Samuel is that in 9 times out of 10, these are aggressions.
From the Israelites.
From the Israelites. They're not
Yeah.
defending
Well,
Jerusalem.
maybe we
going
don't.
out.
Well, maybe we don't know the whole. We don't know it doesn't talk about conquest so much, like that. So we're living that. What's becoming the centralized Israelite state in our story now? Whether it ever really happened this way in history, we won't know. But in our story, what becomes a centralized Israelite kingdom is living at a time of warring city-states in the land of Canaan, right? Warring city-states that are trying to vie for more power and more territory all the time, because historians will say that the Egyptian empire was weak and the Assyrians hadn't risen up yet, right? So there was no huge army to keep the peace, right? And so if you have an Israelite population living in this village that's near a Canaanite city-state, do you need to conquer that Canaanite city-state to keep your people safe? That's kind of the question of the book, right?
Again, it's the centralization of these
Yeah.
small
Yeah.
tribal
Yeah.
communities
Into
into a bigger power.
a bigger power, yeah. But the bigger power brings more stability for your people.
But then that bigger power has gone out
Yeah,
and
yeah.
attacked, whether provoked or not, we don't know.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, everybody thinks they have a reason for attacking.
When the American settlers moved to Kansas or South Dakota or whatever, and there were Lakota Sioux people, right? So who came with the American settlers? The cavalry.
Yeah.
Right? Although I once read an interesting paper about how in Canada the Mounties came first and then the settlers came, and that's why Canada had, people see personal protection with guns is less of a value than in Americans. But I don't know if you could prove that. But but in America, I mean, I'm not saying this is a good thing either, but in America, the settlers came and then the army came too, right?
So it seems to me that the unanswerable question is, how can we all live in harmony?
Yeah.
Peacefully.
Right,
I
good.
mean, it seems, from my study of American history and when I taught it, what our founders tried to do was come up with a system that would enable, ignoring slaves and women.
Right. But it would enable peaceful transfer of power, would enable balancing power and
rights and
interests, but also balancing ambition, checks on ambition of politicians themselves through the system, right? Yeah. So the Book of Samuel is trying to deal with that too, I think, in its own way. And now how does later Jewish tradition solve the problem of violence?
Come to it.
Well, that's an actuality, but how does the idea of Jewish tradition solve the problem of violence? Is that in the future there'll be someone from the house of David who, by example, leads the world through living through God's ways. Right?
That's Messiah.
Yeah, that's what Messiah is. Right?
To me, it's interesting what you said about, yes, I agree that the founding fathers tried to balance these things, but the agreement of that balance is essential for it to continue.
Yeah, the agreement, everybody can agree, yeah.
So there's many people who don't like that balance right now in America, and we'll see it holds.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, but we
But-
do have an ability to amend and to.
Yeah.
Saying, but there's people who, but that's an agreement that's gonna mend that way, I mean.
So good, so what, so in the, so what are we Jews, the Israelites, what was the agreement, was the Brit at Sinai? The covenant at Sinai, that is entering into this way of being that is supposed to curb the violence and things like that, right? Now. We are called in Exodus to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation to the world. Where we, the Israelites, are supposed to be, show by the example of the other nations of how to live, that's the idea too. Right, but also, that's built into the American system a bit too, so, you heard with Reagan, the city on the hill, that's biblical language, right? That's Jerusalem, right? And so, yeah, but we're still people, we're still human. Okay, let's read the last chapter, which is just a story kind of tacked in, not sure what tacked on to the end, not sure what to do with them. Okay, chapter 24.
The anger of the Lord again flared up against Israel. He incited David against them, saying, "Go and number Israel and Judah." The king said to Joab, the army commander, "Make the rounds of all the tribes of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, and make a census of the people so that you know the size of the population." Joab answered the king, "May the Lord your God increase the number of the people 100-fold, while your own eyes see it. But why should my lord king want this?" However, the king's command to Joab and to the officers of the army remained firm. And Joab and officers of the army set out at the instance of the king to take a census of the people of Israel.
Okay, so David hears God to take a census. Joab said, but Joab, God, David's, commander, what does he say?
Why bother?
Why bother? Right? But David doesn't do it, right? Now, why do you need a census? Figure out how to tax, draft, why would David need a census, right? Okay.
So it can fit into the Jesus story.
Right, okay, yes, but that was the Roman Empire, but yeah, okay, but yeah. Yep. Okay,
Okay, they crossed the Jordan and encamped at Eror on the right side of town, which is the middle of the Wadi of Gad, and went on to Gezor. Continued to Gilead into the region of Tatim, Uchi, and they came to Dan Yan, and around to Sidon.
right, Sidon is, now they're going up north, Sidon is, Sidon in Lebanon, right? And they're gonna go even farther into Lebanon, yeah.
They went into the fortress of Tyre and all the towns of the Hivites and the Canaanites, and finished at Beersheba in southern Judah. They traversed the whole country, and when then they came back to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. Joab reported to the king the number of the people that had been recorded in Israel. There were 800,000 soldiers ready to draw the sword, and the men of Judah numbered 500,000. But afterward, David reproached himself for having numbered the people. And David said to the Lord, "I have sinned grievously in what I have done. Please, O Lord, remit the guilt of your servant, for I have acted foolishly." And David rose in the morning.
So wait, so what's wrong with doing a census now? Why is David sin? Or why does he think he sinned? And this story baffles me and it baffles commentators forever. I don't know what the deal is. Why is it wrong to take a census? I have no idea.
It's not wrong, but he's going to do what he wants to do anyway.
Oh, now that he has this knowledge, now that he has the knowledge of the people, he can do what he wants, yeah, I don't know, yeah.
But maybe because he's thinking that his reason for finding out how many people out there was for a negative reason, was
Maybe.
for the tax reason
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
is it, why did he do it in himself, in his head?
Yeah.
Why did he do it?
Yeah.
People were negative.
Yeah.
That's why,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. I
So
wrote-
now in Jewish tradition, like you'll see, some Orthodox Jews won't count Jews. Because of this story, but we'll see in a second. But you don't count Jews, only God counts Jews, like in the book of Numbers, right?
Is there any commentary as to why, because it says at the beginning that God asked them to do it?
Right.
We know
right,
why?
Like, but God's gonna get mad too, so like, it's weird, I'm not sure what this is about, I have to study more, but like. Getting tired with this book, okay, like, yeah, but so like, you'll see you know, you need 10 for a minion, and you'll see people say like, not 1, not 2, not 3, or something like that, or they'll use a verse from the Torah that you know, that they know has 10 words, and they'll say those words when they're counting, right?
Excuse, why did the anger of the Lord flare up again? We don't.
I know, that's why it's like, it seems like a story that's just kind of continued from somewhere else, but like it doesn't fit here, and they just kind of put it at the end of the book, right? Yeah. Keep
It's smacked about who's a Jew kind of questions,
Well-
and there's a smack about who's an American kind of question, and
I-
criticism.
God said God said to count them, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then he came back and he was only interested in the number of soldiers.
Maybe that could be it too. Yeah, yeah. It's counting for the wrong purpose, or counting the wrong people, or not all of it. Who knows? I don't know. Keep going.
David rose in the morning, and the word of the Lord had come to the prophet Gad, David seer. Go and tell David, thus said the Lord, I hold 3 things over you. Choose one of them, and will bring it upon you. Gad came to
Yeah,
David and
God, I mean, in Hebrew, God, but we say it was Gad. God.
Came to David and told him, yes, shall 7-year famine come upon you in the land, or shall you be in flight from your adversaries for 3 months while they pursue you, or shall there be 3 days of pestilence in your land? Now consider carefully what reply I shall take back to him who sent me. And David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Let us fall into the hands of the Lord, for his compassion is great, and let me not fall into the hands of men. The Lord sent a pestilence upon Israel from morning until the set time, and 70,000 of the people died, from Dan to Beersheba. But when the angel extended his hand against Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord renounced further punishment and said to the angel who was destroying the people, enough, stay your hand. The angel of the Lord was then by the threshing of the Aruna, the Jebusite. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he said to the Lord, I alone am guilty. I alone have done wrong. But these poor sheep, what have they done? Let your hand fall upon me and my father's house. Gad came to David the same day and said to him, go and set up an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Aranua.
Aravna, I mean, in Hebrew, Aravna.
Okay. David went up following Gad's instructions as the Lord had commanded. Aravna looked out and saw the king and his courtiers approaching him. So Aravna went out and bowed low to the king with his face to the ground. And Aravna, get a lot of practice on that. Asked, why has my lord the king come to his servant? David replied, divide the threshing floor from you, that I may build an altar to the Lord, and that the plague against the people may be checked. And Araunah said to David, let my lord the king take it and offer up whatever he sees fit. Your oxen for a burnt offering, and the threshing boards, and the gear of the oxen for wood. All this, O king, Araunah, gives to your majesty. And may the Lord your God, Araunah added, respond to you with favor. But the king replied to Araunah, again, you do a shot every time the name. I will from you at a price. I cannot sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that have cost me nothing. So David brought the threshing floor, the oxen for 50 shekels of silver. And David built there an altar to the Lord and sacrificed burnt offerings and offerings of well-being. The Lord responded to the plea for the land, and the plague against Israel was checked.
So, what's the point of this story at the end? David,
Redemption.
right, but David buys. Think about like Abraham buying the burial cave. David buys what? Buys land for an altar. What's he doing? This is in Jerusalem.
He's establishing it's his.
That he
his
bought
land.
the land for the temple. That's the end of the book. Right? The temple in Jerusalem, David bought the land. That's what he didn't take it from anybody. He offered it. Oh, he overpaid for it. Right? Yeah. That's the end of the book. Now, Well, I think, we've ended a long journey of a section of the Bible. Let's do, we haven't done that in a while. Let's do Kaddish Rabbanan is a traditional prayer you say when you end a section of Torah study. Then we'll do Birkat Hamazon, and then next week, I can't be here, but I will, I can get if you're up to, I'll get a substitute to teach. Is that good? There'll probably be something else before we start the Book of Kings.
Probably give them a hard time.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I don't know. We'll see. So, but I'll stay in touch. I'll let you know at the beginning of the week. Okay, so okay, I don't know if you have the sheet in front of you, the Kaddish Rabbanan, but it's up here on the screen. That's good time. All right, Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Me Rabbah, Ve'amar, Yivrach, Yirutei, Yamlit, Malkutei, V'chayekon, Yomechon, V'chayed, L'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agalav, V'zman, Hari, V'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah, V'barach, Ve'olam, Amen, Amayat, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitar, Yitromam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yitalal, Shmei, Yikushta, Rifu. Le'elam in kol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran v'ama v'yimru, amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Tamidehon ve'al kol Tamidehon ve'al kol manda askim ba'oraita diva atra hadein v'diva kol atar ve'atar yehelahon u'lachon shlamar rabah china v'chista v'rachamim v'chayim arichin Zonei Rebichet for Kana Mikodam Abuhon Ibishmaya V'Harav Yibru Amen. Yehei Shlamar Rabbah Min Shemaya Chayim Tovim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael Yibru Amen. Oseh Shalom Yiramav U'Rachamav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Al Kol Yoshei Tevel Yibru Amen. All right. Magin Pop. So let's now give thanks for our director. We just read about David buying a plot of land in Jerusalem. So here's a psalm about returning to Jerusalem. Shir Amalot B'Shuv Adonai Et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kechom Imad Imales Votinu Ushonenu Rivna Az Yomru Goyim Higdil Adonai Lasot Imele Higdil Adonai Lasot Imanu Hayinu Tzemechim Shuv Adonai Et Shivitenu Ka'am Thinking Banegir Hazorim Bedima Berina Yitzoru Haloch Yelechu Bacho Nose Meshech Hazara Boya Berina Nose Alumotav Haverim Haverot Nevarech. Good. Let's all try it again. Yehishem Adonai Mevorach Me'atav Ya'adolam. Yehishem Adonai Mevorach Me'atav Ya'adolam. Bereshut HaChavra Nevarech Eloheinu Shalchanu Mishalo. Eloheinu Shalchanu Mishalo. Utuvo Chayinu. Baruch Eloheinu Shalchanu Mishalo. Utuvo Chayinu. Baruch Ubaruch Shemo. We're on 607. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Hasan et HaOlam Kulo V'Tzuva B'Chen Seru Rachamim Hu Noten Lechem L'Chol Basar Ki Le'olam Chaso U'Tuva HaGadol Tami Asalanu Be'al Salanu Matzon Le'olam Ba'et Ba'avor Shemo Hagadol Ki Wazam Ufarnes Lako Umetiv Lako Umechin Mazon Le'ocho Briotav Asher Bara Baruch Atah Adonai Azan Et HaOlam Kakatu Riachata, the Sabata, Uberaka, Et Adonai Elohecha, Arakakoba Shenatala, Baruchata Adonai, Aharetz, the Amazon, Ubene Yerushalayim, Yerhakodesh Mimherav Yameinu, Baruchata Adonai, Bodei Barachamav Yerushalayim, Amen. Harachaman, we locally learn Baed. You say, Amen. Harachaman, we barach b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Harachaman, we shlach rachab u'ba b'bayit hazeh v'yashulchan zeh shalchanu alav. Harachaman, we shlachanu et Eliyahu hanavi. Harachaman, we shlachanu et Eliyahu hanavi. L'cholan tov. Vivasen lanu lanu. Vivasen lanu lanu. Vivasen lanu b'sorot tovot. Yeshuot v'nechamot. Harachaman, Lenu Yom Shekulo, Shabbat, Umenucha, L'chaye Olamim. Ose Shalom Imramahu, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yalko Yisrael V'imeru, Amen. Adonai Ozeh Amo Yiten, Adonai Yivarech Et Amo V'Shalom. I just want to say one thing, so the part about Eliyahu Hanavi, it's a Sorot Tovot with good news. I just read a column about how in the last few years people have been saying that's a way of saying goodbye now in Israel, the Sorot Tovot. So may you all have this, may you all go, the Sorot Tovot, may you all have a Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi.